Upper Egypt, 1898. A team of British excavators working under the relentless desert sun begins clearing the entrance to a forgotten burial chamber near the ancient city of Abydos. They expect the usual: fragments of pottery, scattered bones, the remnants of a civilization long silent. What they find instead will be spoken of in hushed voices for decades to come. Inside the tomb, sealed beneath layers of sand and limestone, they discover bodies. But not ordinary bodies. These mummies measure over 7 feet tall. Some, according to the excavation notes, approach 8. Their bone structure is massive, their skulls elongated, their wrappings pristine, as if something or someone had taken great care to preserve them. Who are these giants? And why does the official history of ancient Egypt say almost nothing about them? The site at Abydos was no ordinary location. For thousands of years, it stood as one of the most sacred places in all of ancient Egypt, a city of the dead, a gateway to the afterlife, home to the tombs of the earliest pharaohs. But the chamber uncovered in 1898 did not appear in any official registry. It had no royal cartouche, no dedicatory inscription, no name. It existed, it seemed, outside of history entirely. When you find a burial site of that scale, with no identifying markers, your first instinct is that something was deliberately hidden. In ancient Egypt, erasure was a form of punishment, but also sometimes a form of protection. The mummies inside were not positioned like servants or commoners. They were arranged in ceremonial postures, arms crossed, faces turned toward the east, toward the rising sun. The same posture reserved, in every known tradition of Egyptian burial, for royalty. Field records from the 1898 excavation describe at least 9 distinct individuals. The smallest measured 6 feet and 4 inches. The largest, according to the lead archaeologist's private journal, exceeded 7 feet and 10 inches from crown to heel. For context, the average Egyptian male of that era stood approximately 5 feet 4 inches tall. These were not simply tall people. These were something else entirely. Skeletal anomalies of this magnitude don't happen randomly. We're talking about proportional gigantism. Not just height, but bone density, cranial volume, jaw structure. These individuals would have been physically extraordinary by any standard, ancient or modern. Alongside the bodies, excavators found grave goods unlike anything cataloged before. Amulets carved from an unidentified dark stone, a set of alabaster canopic jars, each sealed with a stopper bearing a face, not human, not animal, but something in between, and beneath the largest mummy, wrapped in layers of linen blackened with resin, a wooden tablet covered in a script no one has yet been able to read. The people of the Nile Valley had long carried stories of a race that came before. Not gods, not men, something between the two. The ancient Egyptians called them the Yahw, the transfigured ones. In the oldest known versions of the pyramid texts, dating back over 4,000 years, there are references to beings of immense stature who walked among the first kings, who helped raise the first temples, and who disappeared without explanation before the age of the great dynasties began. There is a recurring pattern in Egyptian religious literature: a golden age, a time before memory, populated by beings who were larger, stronger, and fundamentally different from ordinary humans. Most scholars treat this as pure mythology, but mythology, more often than not, is memory in disguise. Local traditions near Abydos speak of a place called the Valley of the First Ones, a place that predates the pharaohs, a place where the earth was said to hold the bones of those who built the world. The 1898 discovery was not an isolated incident. In 1903, a French expedition working the western desert reported the unearthing of an oversized skeleton near the Dakhla Oasis, over 6 feet and 6 inches, buried alone, facing north, and with no grave goods of any kind. In 1921, a team of German researchers cataloged fragments of what appeared to be an enormous femur near Luxor. The record was filed, stored, and never followed up. What strikes me is not the individual cases, it's the silence around them. These findings were noted, reported, and then effectively set aside. In the world of archaeology, that kind of institutional silence is rarely accidental. Accounts from Sudanese oral tradition speak of a tribe of great builders who once lived along the upper reaches of the Nile. Men who could carry stones that 10 ordinary men could not lift. Men whose shadows fell long even at midday. They vanished, the stories say, before the first flood that anyone could remember. The tomb at Abydos was resealed shortly after the 1898 excavation. The mummies were transported. To where, the records do not clearly state. The wooden tablet with the unread script has never been publicly exhibited. The site itself was reclassified and removed from the accessible excavation register. There are thousands of artifacts in storage across Egypt that have never been properly studied, never been dated, never been made available to independent researchers. We don't know what's in those warehouses, and that, in itself, is a problem. What were these beings? A forgotten royal lineage erased by those who came after? The physical remnants of a population that modern science has yet to account for? Or something older still? Something the ancient Egyptians themselves considered so significant, so sacred, or so dangerous, that they chose to bury it not just in sand and stone, but in silence? The Nile has flowed for millions of years. It has witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of gods, the death of kings, and somewhere beneath its banks, in chambers that may never be opened, it may still be keeping its oldest secrets. We tend to think of history as something we have largely figured out, but every so often, the ground beneath our feet reminds us we have barely scratched the surface. The tomb at Abydos remains sealed, the mummies unexhibited, the script unread, and somewhere in the desert, beneath a sky that has not changed in 10,000 years, the earth holds what it was given to hold, waiting. If giants once walked the banks of the Nile, who were they? And what did they know that we have forgotten?